Welcome to the Securely Yours podcast, brought to you by your very own cyber agony aunts. Me, Amelia Hewitt.
And me, Rebecca Taylor.
We're here to tackle the most pressing questions that arise throughout your cyber career and share some insights from our new book, Securely Yours.
Think of us as your very own mentors, confidants and cheerleaders. Your agony aunts for surviving your career. Well, we're finally here. This feels absolutely bizarre.
I know, can you believe it?
I suppose for those listening, thank you for coming along. Thank you for listening to us today. Amelia, did you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yes, so hi. I'm Amelia Hewitt, and I'm the founder of Hewitt Partnerships, which is a GRC consultancy specialising in the critical infrastructure space. And I'm also the founder of CyBaid, which is a non-profit that supports matchmaking of charities and small businesses with cybersecurity professionals to do pro bono work. Rebecca,
I feel far less snazzier than that. So I am a threat intelligence knowledge manager and a researcher. So 50% of my role is about grabbing threat intelligence from lots of different sources, pulling it into what we call our threat intelligence management system and seeing if we can trust it and we can use it, and then deploying that out to the teams, tools and communities that need it most. The other 50% of my life is as a human intelligence researcher, so working in the dark web and underground forums, looking at new emerging threats and focusing on data brokerage and access brokerage. So a different kind of life for me.
Yeah, I mean, no small feat by any means. And I guess probably the most natural question people have is, well, why did you write a book? And why is it about the topics it's about rather than our areas of specialism in cyber? So probably best for us to explain that, I suppose.
Yeah, I would say so. So the real inspiration for me came from my mentees. I tend to get asked the same questions over and over again about cybersecurity careers, around adversity, concerns they have. And it felt like the right time to get that into a piece of text that lots of different people can access.
Sure. I would say for me, it was twofold. The first one being that I have felt quite lonely throughout my career in terms of resources not necessarily being available to build a career, and I took a little bit of an alternative route. And so it was kind of a manifestation of the things I wish I knew. The second part of this being, this is honestly a joke that went too far. We had we were having a conversation on WhatsApp, and I think one of us was talking about how it would be great to have a cyber agony aunt style podcast or media platform. And then we both said, well, what about a book? And within the day, the document had been created. It was a go. So it probably tells you quite a lot about the kind of people we are. So the book covers a range of themes. There are 10 topics. But something that is extremely prevalent at the moment within the cybersecurity space and probably within the wider professional sphere is personal branding. And you might be rolling your eyes right now because you've heard about this too much, but we hope we'll give you something a little bit more interesting to hear about. So within our book, we have a definition of personal brand, and I'm going to read it out because I think it's really important to convey to you our understanding of personal brand and the angle that we're taking. So personal brand is the blend of your personality, values, experiences and abilities that influences how other people see you. And that's what makes up your personal brand. It's not only about your career accomplishments, but it's also about your personality, communication style, and the influence you have on the people and environments around you.
To add to that, I would say consider it more deliberate and comprehensive than your reputation. One way to really think about it is, what do people think of you when they hear your name? They think of your personal brand, which is a narrative that you convey through your choices, through behaviours, and through that both online and offline presence.
Absolutely terrifying. But whether you like it or not, everyone's got a personal brand and you may not even be aware of it. And something that we found throughout the book and our research into personal branding was that personal branding is constantly changing throughout your life. So if you feel stuck in your personal brand or you don't even know what the hell it is, you can change that and you can evolve that.
Absolutely.
So on to some questions around this. We've structured our book around questions that we have faced throughout our career, ourselves, and through those we mentor. for and our peers. So we have asked for the podcast for people to send in questions that we will answer anonymously. Now, first question, Rebecca, is for you. So you've spent a considerable amount of time on your personal brand over the last 18 months. Why does it matter so much?
So for me, I've been working on my personal brand because I want to convey a certain type of message and put it out there into the world. For me right now, I'm focusing on my own personal development, on my career, and especially on cybersecurity in relation to child safety. So that has been the real push for me to have a solid personal brand that represents that. By having a good, strong personal brand, we can influence how we're seen and how we're perceived. And so by maintaining and designing that in the right ways, you can control that and you can control that messaging. And that's something I've really personally wanted to focus on. Aligned with that is also the fact that by having that strong personal brand, it does open the door to future opportunities. So as an example, by me being strong in my views around child online safety, that opened up the door to new opportunities like the TEDx that I've done, because they align and that's who I am. So that for me is why it matters. And that's why I think it matters for other people.
Sure. I think probably to add to that, one thing that I would say is that having autonomy over your personal brand gives you choice, and it opens, as you said, a lot of doors and opportunities. And from someone that became self-employed from working with a notable or several notable consultancies, it was trying to establish a brand not only for myself but for my business, and that became how I was able to sell what I do. And so I think it's important as well to have a strong personal brand, because it gives you options to feel confident away from your employer and away from being associated with their brand. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that we're all hearing a bit more about now than we ever did before. But it is definitely something that feels a bit icky and a bit taboo still.
I would agree. And just to add to what you said, having that brand means owning your voice and owning your platform and owning the direction. So where you said about stepping away from work and it being actually who you are, that's what I love about my personal brand, is it really does reflect what matters to me.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that.
So similar to the style of our book, we're going to go into questions now. We've asked some of our mentees, as Amelia touched on, and other females in the cyber industry to share some of their lovely questions. And so in this agony aunt style, we're going to start throwing those out now and try and address some of them for you. So Amelia, you're the lucky one that gets this question. How do I identify and build an authentic personal brand, especially in cybersecurity?
Sure. So it's a good question, and it's one that I feel every person's going to answer in a different way. But I will stay on track of what we've said within the book, because I think that really resonates with how I feel. I think at the core of a brand, any brand, be it your company, yourself, anything you're doing, a project, are values. So, and this is something I always encourage when I'm trying to give career advice, is knowing yourself and knowing your core values is the steer for what your personal brand is going to be. It is the foundation of it. So, for example, in cybersecurity, my values are that I've always wanted to help people, and I happened to fall into consultancy because I wanted to help people and I wanted to solve problems. Now, if those are my two core values, it's then a great way to determine what my niche is going to be by thinking about what I'm genuinely enthusiastic about. And so for me, evaluating that I want to help people, I happen to work within a specific set of sectors, my brand is a representation of the fact that I want to help individuals and organisations in those sectors. I would say probably the most live example I can give is the work that we do at CyberSecurity. So I wanted to help others, and I wanted to help charities, and I wanted to help small businesses, and I also wanted to give opportunity for people to volunteer their time and expertise. And so my brand is CyberSecurity inadvertently, and it's that I want to help people and I want to support people. And so I think the first thing with branding, to probably summarise that ramble, is that it needs to come from an authentic place of what you stand for and who you are as a person. In terms of building it within cybersecurity, knowing your target audience is really important. And as Rebecca said earlier, her specific interest within cyber is safeguarding children online. And therefore, when she is providing information, she is representing herself and her values. She is doing that in forums with parents, with guardians, with schools, anyone who is associated with the safeguarding of young people. And so doing some research, I think, can be really important in being able to have an authentic personal brand specifically in cybersecurity, because you know who you're talking to. I'm a really big believer in meeting people where they're at with their understanding, and that's something that we talk about a lot when we talk about security awareness. And so I think targeting people at their own understanding makes your brand more authentic, because quite often we feel we need to overcompensate with acronyms and statistics and specific terms, whereas it's much more authentic when you speak from a place of your own knowledge to an individual rather than to the entirety of LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn is a big thing. We see a lot of inauthenticity via LinkedIn. And when you're trying to build your brand on those appropriate platforms, it's really important to have some consistency in your messaging. And so if there are specific themes that you want to talk about, consistently speak about those things. Do a video series. That's a really good way to represent your brand and who you are as a person in multimedia forms. And I think that over time, people start to associate you with those themes and those topics. So I know now that when people hear about me, they will either think of the CNI security or they'll either think about Cybaid. And those are two associations that have come from having a personal brand. I feel that I've spoken a lot there. Rebecca, what are your thoughts on this?
So I love everything you said. My advice is to not be tempted as you're building that brand and you're owning that brand to start to go into spaces where you're not safe and comfortable. People will approach you based on your brand to talk maybe about certain topics for advice or for guidance. And so if you, for example, know absolutely nothing about AI, but you're posting on AI all the time because you see everyone else talking about it, you're putting yourself in a risky situation. So really remain authentic with what you believe, what your vision is, what your direction is, and then push that out through your brand, because then it will be authentic and then it will work for you.
Yeah, and I think this is something we'll touch upon in another episode around managing sort of the evolution of a brand and emerging technologies and that kind of thing. But I completely agree, because I see this all the time, is that everyone is trying to do everything, and that can give you quite a scattered brand. And the whole point of having a brand is that consistency piece. So I think that's really important. I would say moving on from that, quite nice segue there. The next question, and I very much agree, and I want to hear your thoughts, is that, okay, so you've got a personal brand. What are your top tips, Rebecca, for keeping that brand both credible and engaging? Because I think that can be really hard.
Very much so. I think my first piece of advice is to really leverage the tools around you. So things like scheduling on LinkedIn, things like even using AI if you're feeling a bit cheeky to help you with coming up with the concept of your posts,
yeah, for sure,
is okay. So using those to keep your brand moving and engaging and posting is good and makes sense. The next thing I would say in the world of cyber is to keep your eyes on what is actually happening around you. So, of course, you can post continuously on certain topics in cyber. Say you like to always post about GRC, but actually keeping an eye on the news and what is happening, keeping an eye on new bills, legislations, rule changes, God forbid, but cyber threats and victims, that kind of stuff. If you can bring that into your personal brand, it adds that credibility, because it shows you can naturally talk to that topic, but you're also able to add your own weight and your own opinions to actually what's going on in the world around you. So I think they both support. And then again, touching on something you just said, is acknowledging the fact that your brand can evolve and it can change as you mature and you change. So we spend a lot of time talking to individuals that are just starting in cyber. So their brand may be very different to 5 years' time when they've evolved and they've had that career and they found maybe a specialism. So allow it to naturally evolve. Be authentic with that message. People enjoy seeing others grow and develop and learn and share. So I would just say embrace all those factors and you're well on your way.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it's challenging with branding sometimes because it's so inadvertent. We don't realise we're doing it. And I find that my brand crept up on me. Especially sort of leaving traditional consultancy, I didn't think I had a brand. I was sort of just, I'm Amelia and I work in cyber. And then I guess over the last 18 months, my brand has evolved as I have evolved as a professional. And so I think it's exciting to see. And I would say a part of that is reflection. It's one thing that I'm really passionate about, is that taking some time to sit down and evaluate, where am I now? What's my brand? What do I stand for? What are my values? What am I posting about regularly? And maybe, do I want that to stay the same? Do I want that to change? And almost having a bit of a tactical plan around doing that, because there's no shame in being more intentional about your brand if that's something you want to take control of so that new opportunities open up or you can find a new niche. So I think that's really important. And in terms of, I thought it was interesting what you said around LinkedIn and varying your content. The formula that I sort of use, and I post a lot about what's going on in the news, I will summarize what's going on, the key statistics, and then I usually write my thoughts. So the content is engaging because it's informative, but it's also personal because you can see what I think about those issues. And, you know, the LinkedIn algorithm loves comments and it likes you responding to comments. And so having those discussions, even if you're not posting, commenting on other people's posts is a fantastic way of sustaining your brand, because you're showing up on other people's feeds, maybe people who you're not necessarily already connected with. And I think that's great. And sort of outside of the LinkedIn piece, it's where, you know, what circles you involve yourself in at work and extracurriculars, and having a scattering of interests, I would say, and different communities can be a great way to broaden your reach with your brand, because you're in more than one room and more than one space. And so it's not an echo chamber. It's a very varied environment in which you can be influenced by other people's brands and they can be influenced by yours.
Totally agree. I think having a footprint in lots of different places makes sense, especially as you are growing and evolving and adapting. But one cheeky tip with that in mind is, whilst you may have a beautiful personal brand and digital footprint at whatever point you're in your career, you also may have flavours and hints of footprints and branding from your past that maybe doesn't fit with who you're wanting to be and the spaces you're wanting to grow and develop in. So just be conscious, as well as you're building that brand, of where you may have been before, what can be searchable and what is out there. And maybe this is just a little tip, have a little look through what you may have posted in a previous life and have a clean up. Would be a bit of advice for those that were born and using maybe Facebook when they were significantly younger.
Yeah, I was about to say, we've all got those like Facebook club photos.
Yes,
like.
Exactly that.
But no, I think that's a great point, and it's not something I'd have thought of, and it's something that as cyber professionals, we often it's expected that we are on top of these things, and then you sort of see old tweets resurfacing and you think, oh, that couldn't be me. That I wouldn't do that. But you just don't know, because your life progresses so quickly. And also, I think being considerate that there are going to be times within your personal brand where you have effed up a bit and you've maybe not said the right thing or presented yourself in the best light. I mean, we all have bad days and we all sometimes say things, you know, out of nervousness. And so I think it's also taking some of that pressure off, that it doesn't have to be perfect all the time. And that goes back to authenticity, that you can't be authentic or relatable if you are wonderful all the time.
We are human. It's okay to own that, and it's okay to be that. That accountability piece is so true.
No, exactly. I think we've probably summarised that quite well.
Yeah, I like that one. So, lost track with where we were.
It's all right.
So moving into the last question already for this podcast. So, Amelia, this one is for you, of course. How can I share my LinkedIn achievements without feeling like a big old show-off?
We both laugh at this because we feel this all the time.
All the time. It's terrible.
I think it's so interesting. And when we were writing the book, there were a lot of moments where my first thought, and perhaps not always the right thought, was, do you reckon our male colleagues also feel this way?
Absolutely not.
Right. And so I think it's so funny because, I mean, it might also be quite a British thing. We are very modest as a nation, and our humour is very self-deprecating, and so it can feel challenging is maybe the word, awkward, icky, to sort of show off what you've done. And so I'm potentially also not the right person because I am quite natural at saying, I've done this wonderful thing. However, I would say the first thing is that if you've done something good and you've achieved it, own it. You've done that thing. You've worked hard for it. And if you can't advocate for yourself, who will? And that's something I have found especially present in the last 18 months is that I don't have a company advocating for all of my achievements or, paying for my exams and things. So when I've done those things, it's been off my own back. And that's not to say that if you do it in an organisation that it is any less worthy of shouting about. But my point is, I think that was a very harsh reality check for me that you need to be better at doing this. Now, I would say, specific to LinkedIn, there are a few ways you can do it. The algorithm likes the celebration posts, so there's standard templates where you can talk about things. However, you don't have to use that. A really good thing that I found in talking about achievements is giving narrative to them. Mm-hmm. So it is one thing to say, I've just passed my CISP exam, for example. I've absolutely not done that, and I don't intend on. But it's another thing to talk about your feelings towards education and furthering yourself and the importance of it, to then say, with this in mind, I have just passed my CISP exam. Now, that gives some narrative to your achievement, and it also helps to build your brand because people know why you've done something, your motivation behind it, what you've learned. I did the Oxford AI programme last year, and I spoke in my post, because it felt a bit icky, I spoke in my post about what I'd learned and what I thought was really interesting. And I think by doing that, it's almost a way of firstly building your brand, but secondly taking out some of the overt shouty, I've just done this thing, look at me. And there are people that do that, and there are people that feel comfortable doing that. And there's not to say there's anything wrong with that, but if that isn't natural for you, which it isn't for a lot of us, it can be a really good way of being able to almost storytell. We hear a lot about storytelling, and I think it's great. I really think it's great. I think sometimes maybe when you're doing these posts, consider the what you've done, the why you've done it, and maybe what you're doing next. Where are you going to use those skills? Or if you've won an award, what are you going to do with that influence? Because that tells more about you as a person, I would say, and your brand than just, I've done a thing.
No, I would agree. I don't think it will ever not feel yucky. I try to own it, but I find it hard, and a little bit me does go every time I have to post something online or almost brag. But it's like you said, if we don't do it ourselves, no one else is going to be celebrating that on our behalf.
Yeah.
I do have an organisation behind me, but a lot of the stuff that I've been working on and a lot of the spaces I'm in, it's through my own extracurricular type activities as opposed to smashing it as a woman in TI. So it is about owning that. It is about the storytelling. People love a good old story. And again, that makes it relatable and also will inspire others where they go, actually, I've done something really similar to that. So maybe I could do that too.
Yeah.
And then that ties into being a role model. It ties into being part of that community. And again, it just helps expand that network and that reach and that beautiful personal brand.
Yeah. One thing probably that springs to mind listening to you talk about that is this whole idea we have, and I see it a lot on LinkedIn, around struggle culture. So we tend to think sort of in society that unless you've had it really hard or you've, had to work really hard and all of that, it's not a worthy achievement. And so sometimes things like awards especially can feel really, well, I don't deserve this. So, how can I talk about it? Because I didn't, I had a privileged upbringing or I went to a nice school and that kind of thing. And it's something I've seen a lot of, especially on LinkedIn, is like, my thought on it is it doesn't have to be impossibly hard for you to deserve it and talk about it.
The justification, right?
Right. And I find it so interesting, like this narrative we have in the world, and especially in cyber, that you have to start from the bottom and graft your way through that IT support role. And I did that. And, I've done my time bringing people, monitors and headphones. But I don't necessarily think that that makes me any more deserving of talking about my achievements than someone that's come straight into a grad scheme, cyber consultancy role.
Yeah. I think it's whatever way you're smashing it, right? Like you said, it doesn't have to be I perilously slaved away, working 23-hour shifts for 8 years. It can be that you're just doing a brilliant job and you've been recognised. Or it can just be that you've gone and done that qualification because it makes you feel good and you worked hard and done your study and you smashed it.
Yeah.
And it's okay to own that and share that. And I do think it's important, especially as females, that we do, because that's how other people are going to join the conversation. That's how other people are going to be inspired to go and do things for themselves and to own those awards or own those conversations.
Yeah.
So please, if you are winning things, if you are sitting qualifications and you've done really well, even if you are just doing a bloody good job, please share. Because they're the conversations, especially women in industry and especially young women thinking about doing STEM careers. They're the things they need to hear and see.
But, you say a very varied type of achievements. And to that, I say perhaps a potential part of the issue is feeling that some achievements are better than others. Whereas sometimes for me, an achievement I'd love to brag about is just getting through the week and just getting through all of the things that have come at me. And I do see people talking about what they've done in the week. And that probably makes them a lot better at being able to celebrate their achievements because they're doing it at a more micro level as opposed to I've just completed my degree. And I definitely feel that sometimes when I talk about things I've achieved, that they're not as significant as other people who have won awards and are doing PhDs and that kind of thing. And I really believe in clapping for others until it's your turn.
100%.
Because it will be your turn. You will be doing those big things, but it doesn't mean that what you're achieving now isn't worth shouting about.
Exactly that. And I think if you want to share that on a social way, awesome. Put it on your LinkedIn, put it on your profile, write about it in your blog, whatever platform and space you're using. If you're not comfortable, and we talk about this in the book as well, is like a brag book or a brag Excel spreadsheet where you can list your smug list, where you can write all the things that you are doing. And whilst you might not be running out into the world of LinkedIn high-fiving everyone because you bossed your way through a 6,000 list of Excel items. For you, that's your recognition that I am doing it and I am surviving and I am making a difference and I can look at my list and see all the cool things I've done. And that should act as a validation until you get your clap.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I also think it's worth noting that LinkedIn sometimes is just a cesspit. And so I should have started with that, but if you don't...
LinkedIn, we love you.
Yeah, please promote our content. If you don't feel comfortable sharing on those platforms, you don't have to.
No.
That doesn't make you a better cybersecurity person. Think of the times pre-LinkedIn.
What?
People were still achieving things.
Did that exist?
Right? Like people still had careers and achieved things. And so I think the pressure to perform for LinkedIn can be huge. And that, going back to personal branding, is how we become really inauthentic because we feel that we have to act or speak in a way that isn't natural. And often that does come in the form of speaking of achievements. So just do what feels right.
Do the dance if you feel like it.
Exactly.
But if you want to keep yourself to yourself and have that lovely list of all the things you're doing just to make yourself feel good, that is okay.
Certainly. Well, there's been lots of fantastic questions today and lots of food for thought, some interesting answers from us. Interesting, maybe not the word, answers from us. But I think it's really key to remember personal branding is driven by you, and that is not something that anyone can take away from you or give to you. And so it reflects who you are and what you want to put out to the world. And it is hard to get started. It can feel really challenging when you don't necessarily feel that you have built that career yet to have a brand and talk about those achievements. But if you tread carefully and you plan wisely, you will be able to share confidently and own your achievements, or just simply being able to talk confidently about what you do and what you're passionate about.
Beautifully put. So I suppose we'll wrap up there. Obviously, you're welcome to grab the book. We go into personal brand in a lot more detail. But if you did have questions, relating to personal brand or even any other topic, we are open to hearing them. Please feel free to message us, or you can email us. We'll share that separately and we'll do what we can to reply, or you never know, we may even talk about it on a future podcast.
Oh, exciting. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, team. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support, please share it with others or post about it on social media using the hashtag CyberAgonyAunts.
If you'd like to hear more from us, remember to grab our book, Securely Yours, An Agony Aunt's Guide to Surviving Cyber, available on Amazon.
Finally, a big thank you to Matinee Multilingual for bringing this pod vision to life. Keep smiling, keep shining, and we'll see you next time on the Securely Yours podcast.